All good. Welcome back, everybody. Exactly half 11. So hope you had a nice little break. I got myself a nice coffee just to keep the chat going. I'm wondering, what did you have? Did anyone have any nice snacks? I love a good chat about snacks. I love that it's 99 season again, although today is not looking like a 99 type of day. But I know Danielle and I in Ahead are big fans of the 99s, although maybe not today. But just to keep the chat going, let us know if you've had any snacks. I just had a boring Americano, a little splash of milk, no sugar. Tracy here, overnight oats. Yum. Coffee truck outside of the office, lucky. Trevor, cheese on toast. Are you there, Trevor? I think you're our next speaker anyways. Have you finished your cheese on toast?
Yeah, I did. There'll be no munching during the presentation. Yeah,
It's
this is a
not what
nice
the
little
continuum
perk.
is, the continuum of toast. Perfect. So I think we might dive right in. We have a busy schedule. So first up, or actually second up, first up after the break, now we have Trevor Boland, who we miss at Ahead, but now doing
Hey,
great work with DCU. But yeah, we miss you, Trevor. How's everything going at
hey,
DCU?
good, I think. Good. Yeah, I'm just sharing my screen, but I'm not sure. Can you see that? It seems to be a tiny bit slow or something.
We can see it. I can see it
Oh,
just
you can see
fine.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And I
Okay.
think people at home, it might show up small, but you have the option to drag. You can make our faces smaller and make Trevor's presentation bigger. So you should have that option at home, whatever works best for you. Feel free to adjust your screen. Yeah, really looking forward to Trevor's session on the AT Continuum. Bit of a mystery, but I think the mystery will be revealed
The
shortly.
misery, yeah. No, thanks, Erica. And thanks again to Ahead for letting me speak. I have to say, I love these opportunities to chat and share. So, my name is Trevor Boland. I'm an Assistive Technology Officer, and I've worked in this area now for a little while. So, it was great to have, I suppose, a chance with this presentation, maybe just to reflect on things in the past year or 2 years in the AT practice. So, I suppose why I call this the AT Continuum, I suppose after the last year or two, I found that there's strange gaps in AT awareness that have remained in the 10 years that I've kind of been working in AT. And then there's newer gaps, and then some gaps have got wider, and then there's some kind of blocks or even frustrations about AT support. So I suppose I'll be asking myself lots of questions in this presentation because it's more of a reflection piece that I'm currently going through in my AT practice. So I suppose within the audience, I'm going to be saying, if you have answers to share with me during the presentation, I would love it. So even though the presentation subtitle is gaps and probably mapping out AT and trying to figure out where like AT is in terms of different levels of education, more than likely the subtitle or the real subtitle is musings, maybe and frustrations of an AT officer as we're looking into AT and the types of wide cohorts of disabilities that assistive technology supports in education for our students and learners. So within this, inclusion is like the big word, the word that fuels me in my practice and gets me out of bed every morning. And as a result, inclusion, especially with assistive technology, is really fulfilling when we see it working with students, when we get there to the point where they're using it, where they're becoming independent learners, where there's a vision, hopefully, of them even transferring that AT skill to the workplace or their work placements, even. And so using AT is a way of advancing inclusion for that students and mitigating exclusion, which is like really one of the ultimate goals of AT. So delving into inclusion and AT and where it stands, actually over the last year especially, I've just been exploring kind of little things or gaps regarding AT support. And again, if anyone works in the primary school sector or secondary school sector, I'm really interested in what's going on there with AT and then how these are spilling into, I suppose for myself, I work in higher education, but how these are spilling into tertiary education because there are, I think, little gaps in AT happening in primary and secondary schools that unfortunately then are impacting then in higher education. So over the last, say, 2 to 3 years in particular, I'm having to ask my students or the students I work with in who register with the disability support in DCU far more explicit questions than I would have asked, I suppose, pre-COVID. And the more I'm like chatting to other people, chatting to other AT officers or chatting to other staff, it's clear that maybe there's a few opportunities or skill gaps appearing, and we'll chat about those throughout. So hopefully, anyway, I will remove the mystery of the AT continuum as I move along. So the good thing about technology. And the great thing about that Accessibility Ireland presentation earlier is that, yeah, we are seeing big advancements in terms of digital inclusion. The big thing about the Web Accessibility Directive that's coming in, that's supporting all this WCAG or Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So for me, that really makes me mindful of our students who are blind and low vision because they are a growing number or community of students who definitely we see in DCU, as well as I'm guessing, like from chatting to other AT officers nationally, that there's definitely a rise in blind students as well, which is great, which is fantastic. And I have to say, I love working with them. They get me thinking and make me push how I work in different directions. And then in universal design, which is amazing and fantastic as it explicitly acknowledges accessibility and assistive technology in its consideration points. Also, in altitude, that's really going to help that message of AT and accessibility, as that's going to further that positive message and hopefully ground AT and accessibility more into that education landscape. And then with the help as well of the NDA, that National Disability Authority, who can oversee those web accessibility directives across the country, that we're seeing like maybe slight motivations for education to embed then more accessibility. So ultimately, the more digitally accessible education is, the more effective my blind students will have more opportunities then to be able to interact with digital content via their screen readers and basically have full access to the curriculum like their sighted students or classmates as well. So that's right now, accessibility has really taken over my life and making staff aware of accessibility as well and how it links to AT. Because again, just in terms of that awareness of AT, I noticed within the sessions I run for staff within DCU that sometimes there's just a little gap about that linkage between web accessibility or digital accessibility and the use of, say, screen readers and assistive technology that students use, and how we really need to build awareness about both of them. So for me, I'm going to mostly focus on our population of blind students in DCU. And I suppose where this has really driven a lot of my work in the workshops I deliver in terms of looking at the tools and technologies that these students use, that even though they are one of the smallest groups of students that we have in DCU, which I think is fairly similar to other universities and even the national stats, especially in those reports that AHEAD publish every year, like they are a small group of students. And within that, I think that historically, maybe they have been quite marginalized. And as a result, that's why I welcome things like the Web Accessibility Directive that's really come in, is supporting that digital accessibility of content that these students really depend on heavily. And then within that, these are some fictional profiles of the students that we do support. I suppose when I would have started as an AT officer 10 years ago, maybe I would have tried to box these types of blind students into one type of persona. And over time, from chatting and talking to our blind students, I realized actually they are incredibly complex and their attitudes towards technology is always very different. For example, we have Val, first student, who has a stigma around becoming, she will become blind probably before the end of her studies. And as a result, then just has a big stigma about it. And that might be for cultural reasons as well. And then as a result, she then is marginally using an iPad and then not exploring those kinds of tools that blind students typically use in a device. So that's been an ongoing challenge for 2 years. And then while we have other students who have been blind from birth, they have been using JAWS really competently for a long time as well. And then other students as well who are long-time users. So Rogerio here uses Fusion, which is a magnifier, as well as a tool that reads out text from the laptop screen that he uses. That also, he's got two disabilities, not only being blind, but autistic as well. And therein lies different challenges around how we communicate and he communicates with us and trying to find exactly his needs and also how he interacts with his lecturers and his classmates, as well as dealing with the blind issues. So that's a whole different layer of challenge as well. And then, likes of say Eric, students blind from birth as well, who's incredibly resourceful, long-time user of JAWS, that screen reader technology, and also really curious about AI and use different AI tools, of which this one, Be My Eyes, is an app that he uses. And he uses it for a few different reasons. Sometimes, if an image doesn't have alt text, he's really good at using this app to take a photograph of the image and it will generate a description of the image. It'll also generate descriptions of a room he's in so he can have awareness about what's in the room. And it also has other things like he uses an example with me, like if he's unsure if milk is out of date, there's an option in the app to get someone live on the app to read out the best before date if he can't find the best before date with this app. So it's really good. So live support as well as digital support in that Be My Eyes. And he's curious about lots of different tools and that's what he uses. And then finally, we have this student here who's blind and has ADHD. So not only is she's really resourceful and really eager all the time to learn everything she can and very proactive about getting support and linking in with ourselves and Vision Ireland, who also support her, that she uses these tactile sheets as well. And we've just started exploring that. So those tactile things using swell paper and PF machines as there's diagrams within the course that she does. So basically all our students are in various different levels of situations with their level of support, with how they get support within our university, with how they get support outside the university, like Vision Ireland. So they are coming with different levels of curiosity about technology, some hindered by stigma, some just because they're just maybe frustrated with assistive technology, some because maybe they've had a history of tech that hasn't supported them well. So they are a big range of students. And in terms of that, there's lots of challenges. So when it comes to these students, I find that there's a few little things popping up with that. And one example of a challenge a blind student has told us is of group work. When a blind student is venturing into group work, there's that typical sharing of either a document or a presentation. And within that sharing of the presentation, the blind student sometimes, I would say very often, frequently, is depending on their classmates to make the presentation accessible. So, does the blind student have the confidence to chat to their classmates about how they make either a Word document or presentation accessible? So, would the classmates know about everything in the previous presentation by Accessibility Ireland, like alt text, using proper headings, you creating links appropriately, material like color contrast as well? And if the classmates don't know about how to make accessible documents and presentations, there's just a bit of a challenge that is slightly offsetting the blind student's ability then to interact with that document effectively and to use it. So one of the initiatives that we've started last year is providing workshops for students about how to make documents accessible. So we don't call it something explicit regarding blind people. It's just called like inclusive group work skills. And I just list 5 ways of making a presentation or a document accessible just because group work is so embedded now within our practices that we need to think about how we get that student body in particular part of that inclusive conversation about those kind of skills that are needed. Also, one of the barriers that's really coming across is procurement. Although we as university, we need to be really mindful of absolutely who we have on our procurement list, that sometimes these kind of procurement periods can be quite lengthy. And especially when we are in positions where we have to be quite agile and deliver support to our students and find the right tools, that can become an unexpected barrier. So we have to try to mitigate those kind of delays as much as possible by providing maybe a secondary type of support. And within that type of procurement process, then the types of things like VPATs, those documents that sometimes companies can provide that making procurement processes aware of these kind of VPATs, just so those types of systems that we are getting for these blind students is accessible to their technology, because we don't want to spend a long time doing that. So one of the tools that we're looking at is Matt's accessibility tool. Maths is one of our biggest barriers to our blind students. And luckily, one of our universities in Ireland here, TU Dublin, have had great success with a maths tool called Wirris. And they've been using it for a few years and it's come highly recommended by them. So we're looking at that tool. So unfortunately, it's taken quite a while to get them on the list, but we're getting there. And hopefully then for next academic year, we have a type of recommendation for our lecturers to use an accessible maths tool for those students. And then in terms of digital gaps, one of the things that's really coming about, not only for our blind students, but actually all our students coming in, is there is huge awareness gaps within them. So this is one of the ways where I've had to be way more explicit with our students when they come in regarding their technology awareness. I start from the ground up. We look at our laptops, we look at a browser, we explore the Chrome browser, for example, how we use that, the structure of it, how we create bookmarks, saving our links appropriately, creating folders for our book links, looking at our Google Drive, as we use Google a lot in DCU, and then how to create folders. And we're finding that there is a lot of skill gaps with these basic IT skills that is actually becoming a barrier to AT support, because time then is needed to get the students aware of like how to navigate these types of systems. And first and secondly, to develop good habits, and thirdly, then that these habits actually help them to stay organized. As from talking to groups of students, say I talk to groups of students that could be groups of anything from 30, 50, maybe 200 students, depending on a session. And that's within classes. That one of the key questions I've developed with students is like, how many of them work in chaos, where they don't have a system day to day that helps them to stay organized? And as a general rule, I would get about two-thirds of the class raising their hand when I ask this question, no matter how big or small the class is, that they have no system to stay organized day to day with work. So that to me poses a lot of different questions around with these students about how they've never been so saturated with types of technologies and devices, but how there's a gap appearing about their level of skills using these devices, just for basic organization, like even file naming as well. Those kind of skills are missing. And then even here in DCU, one of our courses, it's a media course, has had to build in folder creation and file naming within their course in the past, I think, 2 years, because they've noticed this skill gap as well. And it's definitely becoming bigger with our students as well, these things. And even with note taking as well, it's a challenge. Oh God, Daniel, am I already up? Is time already up? No. Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm so bad. But okay, so there's device cultures, typically in primary and secondary schools, these trolleys, which are really good, compact and small, they're causing a bit of a challenge because then students are using computers less. So desktop computers, which we use in higher education, and how tablets are used versus how desktop computers are used. That's another gap within that. So they're not coming in with the right skills then that they might have acquired in primary secondary schools. With state exams as well, I think AT is dropping maybe over the last few years, I want to say, as we see that students don't even know in their Leaving Cert year what type of AT support they get until about maybe November of that year where they're doing the Leaving Cert. So that's a huge challenge, because I was even asking a group of secondary school teachers a few months ago about how do they equip the students then with the skills of AT to help them. And they were just saying more than likely the student's going to be getting a reader or a scribe. So there's no opportunity really to embed the skills in AT, because it's just not possible within that time span between November to when they get Leaving Cert. Just wow. So then I just chat about an accessibility resource I've made for not only staff but students as well, just equipping them with 5 key tips about accessibility, making it memorable, trying to make it like fun as well about accessibility, and just using this kind of acronym house as well, just so it sticks in the head as well. And then lastly, just a bit about AT strategies. That AT, we're not seeing enough AT mentioned within the primary secondary school curriculum. We're not seeing AT mentioned within digital frameworks. We see a little bit of assistive technology mentioned, but not a lot when they talk about inclusion using technology, which really needs to be it more. So hopefully, if that's a message out to maybe higher education or like teachers, that there's an opportunity for them just to advocate about that mainstreaming of assistive technology, that there seems to be just a few little gaps around that. Okay, so happy to chat about this later, but thanks a lot for listening. Danielle, I'm so sorry for going over time, but hopefully people have an opportunity just to chat and reflect. I suppose I'm really calling out to educators about that kind of AT awareness and those kind of gaps that we're seeing within primary and secondary schools, and how they are impacting in a big way in higher education with our students, and that there needs to be some kind of forum or communication happening about AT support across all levels of education, just so we're giving our students with disabilities as much of an opportunity to use AT from the get-go when they come into higher education. Unfortunately, that's just not happening as much as it should. So thank you very much. I'm so sorry for going over time.
You're all good, Trevor. Thank you so much. Really good, valuable information there as well. I know you could have kept going for until tomorrow, probably.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop. Thank God. Thank God I really listened to word limits and minute limits and all that stuff.
You're all
Yeah.
good. Thank you so much, Trevor. It's wonderful to hear from you and the good work that's being done. And it's also really nice to hear that sometimes there are things that need to change. So it's good to call those things out. And I think this is a good spot for that, that not everything is going perfectly. Thank you once again, Trevor. And thanks to everyone who contributed in the chat as well. Lots of good things being said. If you get a chance to read some of those, Trevor, you might be pleasantly
Brilliant.
surprised. So lots of
Oh,
people happy about your presentation.
that's okay. Thanks very much. All right, cheers. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Trevor.
All
Perfect.
right.